crafting guide for the War Within. You might be wondering why I'm all the way over here.
Are you still wondering what's going on? Welcome in to the War Within, yet another World of Warcraft video. Today we are going to go over Jewelcrafting in the new expansion. This is going to be a leveling video going 1 to 100, and we've already done enchanting and tailoring, and there's many more to come, but this is the one that we're going to go into. But before we go into the video, or get into the video, make sure that you guys drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel with all the notifications on. And make sure that you check out some of the interesting links that we have down below in the description. You might find yourself some interesting options. What we have in front of you, in front of your faces right here today, is I'm going to do a walkthrough of leveling up Jewelcrafting. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the different options that you have so you can see what kind of materials that you need to level up the profession. Now, depending on when you actually watch this video, some of the prices and some of these materials might be a little different. So that's why I'm going to go over all the options so you have multiple different ways to level it. So the video kind of has a purpose for longer than maybe just the beginning of the expansion. As you learn Jewelcrafting, you have three different, recipes. Of course, we see prospecting, we have it back again. We have engraved gem cutters, and then we have one cut deadly amber. What are we looking at? We are looking at prospecting right here. You actually have to use 5 different pieces of ore to be able to do one prospecting, giving you a confirmed 1 point. Then you also have engraved gem cutters. You make 2 to 3 at this point, and you also have the deadly amber, which requires 1 engraved gem cutter and a ambivalent amber. In this case, I would probably say, because this only requires 5 handful of pebbles, 1 glittering glass, and then 5 bismuth in this case. You can obviously, depending on the rank that's cheapest, go for that, but considering that these ambers are something that you can actually get out of prospecting, but also, these are probably going to be pretty cheap as a byproduct for some people. So you might even just want to buy these, and then you go ahead and make the engraved gem cutters, because you get 2 to 3 of these, and then you actually only have to get the ambers. It requires quite a lot of, prospects here. If you do these to get the right ambers, or a good amount of ambers, and since it's 5 ores, you're probably better off potentially purchasing these as materials. But what I would go for here first, you're going to do a lot of prospecting regardless, because you need a lot of these materials, handful of pebbles and glittering glass and all this stuff. So you'll be going in here eventually anyway. So I would probably start out with buying the cheapest possible ore that you can find, or a handful of pebbles, whatever it is. So we're just going to go ahead and prospect some bismuth. This will, as you can see, give us some ambivalent ambers here, which we will be able to use as your other crafting opportunity here. Now at 5, we actually get some access to some more, but we're just going to continue going along prospecting some bismuth here. Ambers are what can take us pretty far into the profession, so we need them anyway. I think it's a pretty good idea to do it. And as you can see, we're getting a little bit of glittering glass here and some handful of pebbles, which means we're going to be able to use that for our engraved gem cutters, which we need for gem cutting. So now that prospecting is at a green point, we're going to use it to hit about 15 here, and now prospecting is grayed out, so we don't get any more points. At this point, you have a choice to make, because you have gilded vials, which you can get 3 to 5 off, and these are used, for other professions than Jewelcrafting in itself, but you can actually still get skill points on these things here. So I would use any leftover ore that you have, and then whatever handful of pebbles and glittering glass that you got, I would just use those up. We're just going to go ahead and say that was around 5. It was probably a little more, but we're going to go ahead and do that because we need these anyway. Get a little further in here. Boom, boom, boom. Probably go ahead and just take it to 20, because we need a lot of these for cutting gems anyway later on. But you can always just come back to it. You don't actually have to do gem cutters to get all the way to 20, but that is around the time where you will stop getting points for engraved gem cutters. But again, as I said, we need a lot of them. So we're just going to go ahead and make them anyway. The next option is you can see we have gilded vials as an option, or we have versatile sapphire, masterful onyx, or quick emeralds. These are pretty expensive, and these are the blue rare versions of gems. So obviously these are going to be used by a lot of people, but this early on you can't make much more than a quality 1 unless you have some profession gear active or potentially use some concentration. So you could go for these, but they also require 30 crushed gemstones. Really expensive. And this goes the same. You can look at this one, the versatile sapphire. It actually only uses 4 instead of the 6 on these 2 other ones, but we don't want to go for that because gilded vials actually gives you the option to only use 6 glittering glass and ambivalent amber, which we've gotten from prospecting anyway. Same with the glittering glass. And then we do have some crushed gemstones. This you get from crushing, which is something you could also use your ambers for next to some ore. So whether you make this yourself, if that's cheaper, or you buy it off the auction house, that's something you'll have to check based on price points. But we're going to go ahead and craft some of these until they get to a point where they're going to be green. They actually give us quite a lot of points, these gilded vials, and are some of the cheapest stuff that we can make because we do get decorative lenses here, but as you can see, they require way more. So soon we're going to be at the point where, as you can see right now, we're looking at purely green points. At this time, we are looking at potentially crafting some gear, which is actually not too expensive. And otherwise, we are looking at profession equipment. And the green versions of the profession equipment is actually really cheap. You'll see here that we only need, for these 2, you'll need, actually, we'll just go for this one. Decorative lenses, you need 1 and then 4 of the crushed gemstones. And the other option is going for 2 ambivalent ambers, stunning sapphire, and 2 crushed gemstones for a malleable pendant. You could craft this and potentially sell it on the auction house for a little bit, or send it over to a enchanting character that you have for a disenchant, if that's something that you do. But at the same time, if you go for some of these, you can also sell these on the auction house for people to use. And at this point, you can already make them at quality 3, which is not the best, but it's pretty decent. But considering this is so cheap, this is where you would go next to get yourself a decent amount of points. Now, whichever one that you end up choosing is kind of based on the profession build that you're going for. Sand from the future, but also not really the future. If you do end up getting the blasphemite recipes, that is what you want to use as soon as you possibly get them, because blasphemite will be able to actually take you all the way up to 100. That's, you're going to have absolutely no issues with that at all, as I also show a little bit later into this video, but just so you don't get it twisted, that is where you want to go. But for the purposes of this video, I'm going to go for where I would probably put my first points, which is most likely going to be in shaping, just because of the fact that this is kind of where, if you want to put your points into getting more profession stats, and you want to get into masonry to make some more, to get some more out of crushing, and you get some more out of out of prospecting, this is kind of where you have to go. And since this is what I'm mostly interested in, because I don't really enjoy work orders too much, this is where I would go. Now, if you're more interested, of course, into what some of the gear crafting has to offer with jewel crafting, or if you want to get into the sockets with gems, right, you can do that too. This is probably also an area that I would want to go into, so we're going to go ahead and unlock both of these. Now, when it comes to shaping, where you can get some of these recipes are actually going to be masonry and glass work. This opens up a couple more options, so we're going to go ahead and take these 2. It's a lot of points to actually put into it, so having multiple alts with multiple different builds is going to be wanted. Now, you can see here we have some optional embellishments, and we also still have this one, so every day we'll get some points on that if we don't rush it. But here's the thing, right? If you, like me, mostly want to avoid the fact that you have to do any of the work orders, you want to go for the ones that are either materials or stackable items, so you can sell it on the auction house. At this point, you can see that didn't really give us too many options, so this spec by itself will not be able to take you to 100. So even if you really care a lot about prospecting, you're going to be missing out on quite a lot of points because you are going to be behind, right? Around this time, we'll get one more point here, getting up to 60. Right there, we end up graying it out. So at this point, if all our points are put into shaping, we are actually not going to be able to get points from anything but Algari, Amber, Prism. Here, this is where you would have to choose if you want to put the lowest amount of points into it. You choose to go for either Emerald, Onyx, Ruby, or Sapphires. This doesn't really matter too much. It kind of just depends which one you want to go for in terms of stats, right? Each of these give different stats. So again, that's totally up to you. We actually get the other Prism here. But this is where you'll see here, learn how to cut Masterful Sapphire. So we're going to go ahead and add 1 point into that, 1 point into that one, and then that serves the purpose of what we want. So now you'll see we get access to a couple more options here. We're going to go ahead and do the Algari Sapphire Prism. Might as well. We get another 2 points from that. Then we either go for the Masterful Sapphire or Quick Sapphire. Obviously, this depends on which one you choose. You can also go for multiple ones if you want. But on this one, we're just going to go ahead and craft along. Now, the thing about gems is, of course, they're expensive, but you will also recuperate some of, the initial investment into actually leveling your profession. This depends on whether or not you want to spend your concentration on this, because at this point in the profession, you can see we can guarantee rank 2s, and then we would have to use concentration to be able to get any further. But you see here at 75, the gems actually stop. Not stop. They turn into green, and then at 80, you'll notice that these are going to turn completely gray. So at that point, we have to rely on prisms. Because if you scroll down here, you'll see on any of your unlearned recipes that the only ones that will give you more points are going to be prisms, which again, that's a lot of knowledge points that you have to put in the profession. Or if you want to go for profession equipment or jewelry or things like that. To not run completely away from my train of thoughts, the only other way if you want to get up to this point is putting points into jewelry crafting if you want to get to 100 at a reasonable speed. Obviously, however many points you want to spend on this, it's totally up to you, right? Because the progression in jewel crafting, but also every single other profession, is kind of limited every single week. It's not similar to Dragonflight's Dragon Shards of Knowledge, where you can infinitely farm knowledge points. We are somewhat capped to a weekly maximum. We don't know what the full maximum is looking like just yet, but if you end up going for a gem cutting build or a shaping build, you will just be a little bit lower on your skill points. But again, that's not necessarily a bad thing. But the way that you would be able to get, the last couple of points is having to go into either rings or your amulets. And, the more points you put into these particular subspec nodes, the higher of a chance to get the last couple of points through work orders or through crafting for ults or whatever you end up doing, the higher the chances, right? So right here, you'll be able to see that we have an amulet of earthen craftsmanship, and then we have the ring of earthen craftsmanship. And again, these, require sparks of omen, so that's a way to do it. So that will require work orders. The other things that still give us skill points at this time is magnificent jeweler settings. This is going to be a recipe that drops from the raid, so this is not something that you will be able to get before Season 1. And if you're watching this when Season 1 is out, then maybe you'll be able to purchase it for a reasonable price on the auction house. Again, then this could save you, but early on, unfortunately, that's not something that you could use. When it comes to these wonderful blasphemite recipes, you actually get these as drops from the dungeons. So these could take you a little bit further, but again, these are pretty expensive. Well, they might not be too expensive because blasphemites have changed so much. So these might save you depending on whether or not you can actually get access to these, either buy them off the auction house or drops in the War Within dungeon. So this is something to also consider. This might actually just make that whole process a lot easier, because I might actually right here, we'll just buy one of them on the beta to show you guys what I mean. we'll get the elusive blasphemite. And you can see this one gives 3 points, and this can take you all the way to 100. Your other options are prisms again, but these are daily cooldowns, so that's not fast. And then you have your profession equipment. Unfortunately, these all require 150 artisans acuity to even buy in the first place. So what, like, if your purpose in jewel crafting is not crafting this, you won't buy these early on, because then all these will give you is just a first craft bonus. Well, you might buy this, like, because you might buy this one, the extravagant loops, just because that's a jewel crafting accessory, so you need that for jewel crafting. But the 3 other ones you probably won't. And also, if you do a profession build that's not focused on extravagant loops, you'll actually see here, you can see that this is even after putting points into it, but you can see that we can just almost guarantee a quality 4 out of this profession gear. So you might be better off getting this from somebody else that's fully spec'd into this, or having an alt that's spec'd into it. But yeah, I mean, at this point, you either craft blasphemites if that's your cheaper option, or because work orders are a thing, if you can get people that provide all the materials, then obviously that kind of makes it free. But the thing is, you would have to scour the trade chat to get to a point where you can actually even find customers in the first place. So if you are able to get the blasphemite recipes out of dungeons, or potentially buying them off the auction house, then that is probably your best option at this point. Even if you don't actually end up going into gem crafting that much. Again, as I talked about earlier, gem cutting obviously impacts that a decent amount. But again, it depends on your build and what you want to focus on. But I hope this made sense. I know this was a little all over the place when it comes to jewel crafting, but you also have a lot of different ways to actually get up to 100. So just remember to consider all your options and look at the prices on the recipes that actually gives you skills, and don't stick around too long on the ones that are green, because you could actually end up having to craft a lot of something where you could save some gold, or maybe crafting one version of something that guarantees you a skill point. So just keep that in mind. But if you did end up watching the video until this point, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope it made sense. If you have any questions to jewel crafting and the leveling of it, make sure you drop that down in the comments below. And again, if you want some build recommendations for this profession, I've made a separate video for that. So make sure that you check the description for that, or the pinned comments down below. But as always, I appreciate you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.